Hello, listeners, and welcome to the first episode of Next Level Business Podcast. My name is MYB Ventures, your host for the Next Level Business, a show about startups, entrepreneurship, business leaders, and last but not least, diversity. From gender to ethnicity to socioeconomic background, this is a real celebration of cognitive diversity. In this episode, entitled Unicorn Noir, because of the two inspirational guests joining me today, are founders who have completed the entrepreneurial lifecycle from idea to exit. Let me welcome my two guests. So Emma and Odera, welcome.
Well,
hello.
Thank you.
Great.
Hello,
Thank you for giving up your lunch hour for this podcast.
No
So
problem.
how about we start off with a
worries.
brief bio or introduction of yourselves as people before we move on to the actual topic of entrepreneurship. So Emma, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So Emma Obanye, grew up in Hackney before it became cool. Spent 15 years or so working in the tech world, half of that in the corporate world for companies like Microsoft and Sky, and then the second half in the startup world. So I basically left my 9-to-5 job behind back in, I think, 2012, when myself and my flatmate and co-founder, we decided to just quit it all and start a company called BuddyBounce. We went into the first cohort of Wyra. We went on to raise about 400k or so, and then we exited BuddyBounce back in 2016. BuddyBounce, by the way, was a loyalty platform for fans of musicians. So it was a way of bridging the gap between people like Justin Bieber and their ivory towers and the, everyday fan. So fans earn points, rewards, one-to-one communication with their favorite artists and stuff like that. And so for the last 2 years, I moved essentially to Barcelona, which is where I live now. I spent about 3 months in Thailand, moved to Barcelona, where I now a co-founder of a new company called Mindful Team, which is all about making or helping cultivate happy, productive teams. And then the other half of my time is spent leading the delivery of a new diversity initiative called OneTech, which is all about diversifying the tech startup ecosystem and providing more opportunities for women and people of colour.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Odera.
Thanks, Odera.
And now I'm following that. Okay. Hi. So, you know me, but I'm Odera. I'm Odera. I'm Nigerian by heritage, but I've grown up in the UK for most of my life. Grew up in the north of England, in Leeds. So if my Leeds accent comes out and switches out of this accent halfway through, you'll know how. I grew up in Leeds. I came down to London after uni, where I studied in the north in York, and I ended up working in investment banking. So personally, I knew that as a student, I had such enthusiasm for socializing that I needed to get rid of those habits, and I was looking for the most, if you will, rigid environment that would just, not rigid, but an environment that would really shape me and give me the discipline I needed to set off on the journey that I'm on now. So I actually was choosing either to go into banking, or I had in mind to actually go to Sandhurst Military Academy.
I was thinking about military.
And it was I was really just looking to have a high standard of discipline. Thankfully, I got the option which paid a bit better, and I ended up joining a grad scheme at a bank here in London. And then it was really after that my entrepreneurial journey began. So that's kind of me at a high level.
Super interesting. I guess it would be rude not to mention myself. So as the host, just this one time, let me indulge. So MYB Ventures, born in Saudi Arabia, I should mention, and that's kind of how we think we've got our connection, that our parents are both in Saudi Arabia at the time. But raised in London, of Ghanaian descent or heritage. Spent most of my career in banking, but I kind of graduated from doing IT at UCL and LSE. Then my first kind of stint in the world of work was actually in healthcare consulting, because the traditional African thing that if you're an immigrant here, you've got to be a doctor, an engineer, something proper. Yeah. So the closest I could get to medicine was working in a healthcare IT company called Cerner Corporation. So at that time, they were going to come into the UK and transform the NHS with this information backbone, but kind of got quite bored in this slow environment. So then I decided to follow suit and do what most LSE grads would do, join a bank. So I was lucky to get into the JP Morgan graduate scheme, originally in technology, interestingly, which I loved. I loved studying at LSE. I had this amazing professor called Professor Angel, who just really, thrilled us with his concepts, etc. But then working in tech in the real world was a bit of a slap in the face. So back in 2007, when I joined JP Morgan, tech wasn't sexy back then. So you were kind of in the basement, and I kind of thought, this is not for me. Let me come to the light. So I managed to move from tech into sales. Was working in transaction banking sales for 9 years. But throughout my time at JP Morgan, diversity was really important to me. So I was so lucky that I got an opportunity to lead the Black Network, work in the Women's Network as well. And then finally to manage the Polo Club, but that's another topic for another time. But again, just in terms of, diversity, mixing with different groups, cognitive diversity, gender, and even say social mobility, because my journey in Polo has also given me access to people from different backgrounds as well. But I think just diversity is so important. And it's just beyond talking about it and having policies, you really need to enact it and to be a diversity champion. So I think that's what really brought out the champion in me. And then more recently was working for Crown Agents Bank, which was acquired by Helios Investment Partners. So that was a real entrepreneurial experience, going in and really kind of resetting the strategy for the firm and executing it. And now I guess I've been flirting with entrepreneurship for a while. I've had the entrepreneurial itch. So just working with fintechs and a consultancy and advisory kind of perspective. So it's really interesting, but this is about the two of you, but I just thought I'd just introduce myself to the listeners.
Very interesting stuff. So I'm happy to
bless you.
Interview you.
Yeah,
and I guess,
episode
2, you know what I mean?
On a serious level. Let's do that. That would be quite interesting because also, I guess for someone for me that's been 2 feet in corporate for a very long time and wanting to do the pivot full time into fintech, that mental shift, and it's a whole different way of being, I find. And in fact, I think probably the thing that was most shocking to me about entrepreneurship is it's actually quite a lonely life. It's you with your idea against the world. So that was kind of a shock.
Yeah, and your internal engine of energy.
Right? Yeah.
Speaking of connections, because you established that there was a Saudi Arabia connection. The Leeds connection, because I was born in Leeds.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I was born in Leeds, moved down here when I was 3. So there's got to be something there.
I didn't know
100%.
See, I grew up in Leeds until I was 18. So
oh right, okay.
We may have walked past each other in the street.
I need to ask my mum. I need to ask my mum about your family and see if there's something there. There must be, because they were there from I think the 60s, 70s. My family
they may
were
have
there.
met.
Yes, 100%. Look at that.
So we are connected.
What, my family? Ibo from Anambra.
They definitely know each other.
Yeah, exactly. Because I remember saying to him, right, I was like,
oh gosh.
When I first met him, well, we'll come to that, but I was like, you must be Ibo, man. He is like your face, your nose. I was like, this is the Ibo boy right there, man. And stuff away. Right there. Sorry, I had to.
No. I love this. The connections, the universe has brought us together. 100%. Clearly. And in fact, when I first met you, I'm not sure if you remember, but one of the other startups I was working with, Wealth Kernel. So Karen, who was part of the organization committee, I think, for PopTech at Google Campus, and you were speaking, and I just thought, who is this beautiful woman who's like done the full life cycle? Oh my God, I've got to meet you. So I remember, you're always on my mind since then. So I'm so glad that we got to kind of we had our reunion at the Backstage Capital launch in London. Yeah. So that was fantastic.
A really good dinner.
Oh my goodness.
Good chat.
And that's why I was like, we have to capture this and we need to send this to the world, because I think diverse founders are doing so many amazing things, and we need to tell the stories and almost kind of write our own history, because in future we'll be passing this down to generations and also inspiring them. So super important.
Totally.
And actually, just on that topic of role models and inspiring people, who were you looking up to during your time? Because I just think how many founders that look like us have made it to sort of.
There are not many. For me, I think I looked at this as this is a personal fire burning in me. I'd always wanted to pursue. I remember when I was 16, and I was at college, which is basically a sixth form college, and I was basically buying computer parts, and I was reading my Micromart magazine, and basically buying my computer parts and putting them together, and then I'd actually sell that computer in the local Loot magazine.
Really?
And I would do that as a part-time job to make a bit of spare cash as a 16-year-old. I mean, what do you need money for? But it was my first venture into doing anything in that space. And it was just a passion that I'd had. It was a journey I was set on. I literally even remember choosing my subjects at school. I chose technology, law and business before my GCSEs. Then at the GCSE, then I chose law and computing at A-level. Then I went to university and chose a degree was actually business and actual computing. Basically, all the way throughout, I made that single choice to go in this direction. And only really looking back did I realize I was actually doing that. But it seemed, looking back, that I've actually really focused on this one outcome for ever.
Well,
for me personally.
So
it wasn't sort of, I want to look like that guy, because there were no references, but yeah, at some point something must have crossed my path that made me think this is where I want to be in life. And I think by then I probably called it a businessman. I didn't know the word
businessman.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Exactly, and I had a collection of ties. I still have them somewhere.
I love that.
And and it was just a passion. It was just a life I wanted to. I can go into more, but yeah, it was a life I really wanted to veer towards, no matter how terrifying it seemed. And anyway, I can tell more, but yeah, it was an internal drive for me.
Yeah, I second that. Like, I know, and you know what I think as well. Like, back, you know, our parents are we have West African heritage, and there is that entrepreneurial spirit just there, like the side hustles. I remember my mum doing, you know, going around Europe buying cloth and sewing and doing that on the side, and food and all of that kind of thing. And I think for me personally, I had an auntie who was studying engineering when I was young. So in a similar vein to you, she taught me like how to build a computer, all the different parts, and going through these trade magazines and ordering stuff. And then eventually my mum bought me a computer off my aunt when I was about 13 years old. And I just went down that path, and there were no real role models. But once, I think I remember going with my old co-founder Julia and Yvette, we went to a Women in Tech, I think there's a Women in Entrepreneurship conference or something. We paid £38 each to go in there, and we saw, I think it was Shah Wasman speak, and we were both, the three of us were like, wow, this woman was strong, powerful, she very articulate, she knew what she was doing, and she was very successful. And so we went over to her and kind of like asked her, could you mentor us, because we were like, you know, and eventually she agreed. And I think for me personally, it was all the other women that I met along the way that were slightly at, you know, at another level to us, and just wanted to kind of befriend them and seek their advice on how to kind of navigate that world. But there were no real you know, role models in the tech world at the time that were kind of aspiring towards. It just naturally happened. Like, I always knew it was just inside the blood. Like, I want to be an entrepreneur.
No, completely.
In some shape or form.
It was an internal. I think there must have been something that crossed my path early on that made me just think, this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Literally till I died.
Wow.
It was, I mean, banking and going to the army and so on were all intentions that were designed to aid that one life goal. And anything aside from doing this had been intended to feed into this. So yeah, that was, I think we had very similar experiences there. Yeah. Totally. None of the structures that exist today were around. There was no, to me at least, I wasn't exposed to any tech scene. Didn't know the word startup. Didn't have any, uncle who's a venture capitalist or anything like that. So I really...
No, but it's a very valid point, because I think for today's young people, I feel like saying they don't know how good they got it, but that's probably what...
You know how old you make us sound?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Back in my day, when I were a lad.
Here we go, the leads access coming out.
But as far as role models and access, etc., because during our time, if I think about my own experience, my parents came to the UK when I was 4. But they had very traditional jobs. My dad still a doctor, still is a practicing doctor. And my mum was a science teacher, and then she got tired of that and then got into property development. So that's her entrepreneurial side coming out. So it's very much looking at her and what she's built that inspired me. And even I would say during my time at JP Morgan, 2 women come to mind. So Grace Wang, she was, I think, the CFO of one of the business divisions, and also she was actually the head of the Polo Club who helped me with that pathway. And also Kate Lucio, who was very senior in our corporate bank. And both women were very ambitious, very much go-getters, and really kind of made me feel okay about also being ambitious and going for what I wanted. And I think also clearing pathways, people that actually, or like mentors or even sponsors, people that help facilitate and help you get there. Because it's one thing having the ambition, but who's going to hold your hand and help you get there and kind of clear out the forest with their machete and leave a path for you to walk down. I think for today's young people, there's so many avenues, but you know,
and it's in the media and they're exposed
and
to
it's
it.
sexy now. I mean, like Gary Vaynerchuk,
Yeah.
Gary Vee,
now it's cool. I remember when I was in banking and I was at the point where it's been some time. I'm really itching to just get going and start making mistakes and just start building. And how hard it was to even think to tell family who have all the traditional West African family expectations. You know, when your family's able to, your parents are able to say, you know, my son's a banker, and engineer, he's a lawyer,
doctor. Totally.
And then you say, actually, I'm about to veer left, and go and be an entrepreneur. You know, obviously, like, especially if they're first generation, they will have seen entrepreneurs as being people who are maybe at the grassroots level back home, right? Selling maybe things in the market. You know, it's not a particularly respected career. So that was, I felt like I was denying myself not to be doing this. So back then it really was not an obvious path. But upon doing it, I mean, obviously times have really changed, and by total chance, now all the bankers, trying to become entrepreneurs.
Very true.
Yeah, so it's now become
very sexy. It's very
very,
cool.
very sexy. It's a career now. It's literally considered as an alternative career with less risk actually than even being in a corporate world. When used to have a job for life. And actually these days people have several jobs that used to be maybe every 1 or 2 years, and now we're down to the gig economy where actually you can have multiple employees simultaneously for a long period of time. So I think things have really changed structurally as a society, and it's less disastrous now. I think public figures like Mark Zuckerberg and Evan Spiegel and so on have made it obvious that there's a path to potential success even as a young person. But times have changed, and it was hard.
So Barry's entry.
No, I remember, for example, even before jumping ship from the corporate world into the entrepreneurship world, I used to change jobs every couple of years, because I'd just get bored or whatever. And my mum was like, "What are you doing?" She couldn't. She's like, "You don't do that. You stay in a job for life. A job is for life. You know, you have one place." And I'm like, "Nah, it's a different world. You know." Yeah. And for me as well, I don't know if you guys felt the same, but the freedom, the thing that called me was the sense of freedom, being able to literally dictate to a degree, because that's how it looks like from the outside, but being able to have that creative freedom over the things that you're doing and your day and mixing it up a bit rather than being stuck in an office, 9 to 5, doing the same things.
Oh yeah, completely agree. Having the autonomy to be able to say, this is what I think is smart, this is our strategy, but you know what? You know what I'm going to say. Getting the freedom to live your own life exposes you for the first time to your own fallibility. And all of a sudden you can't hide behind, my boss is an idiot, my company's doing it wrong.
It's everyone else's fault.
Exactly.
That's not me.
Right? You came up with the idea, you designed the pitch, and
put the team together.
Why are they not buying? don't they understand how great this is? Right? And that cognitive dissonance when it hits you for the first time is it's like it's going into a wall.
Bam.
Like I think the thing that happens is when you are looking at businesses from afar or entrepreneurs from afar or business models from afar, it seems very simple. You can construct the world in which that business lives in your mind without all the nuance and detail that actually matters, and say, well, it's really simple. If you build an app like this and press a button, a car will come. That's how you build Uber. Simple. And you miss all the detail because you're from a distance, so you don't have to deal with any of the real challenging realities, all the stacks of nuance and intricacies of what really make things work.
Plus the fact that entrepreneurs are always in sales mode, right?
Yeah.
It's always hyper positive, everything's awesome, everything's good. No, I'm not down.
Fell out of bed, had this idea. Now I'm a millionaire. Who knew?
Exactly.
Yeah, they're always in positive sales mode. And the media where you learn about entrepreneurship is obviously selling something, and so they're glamorizing things. And so you read about Mark Zuckerberg and you read about the idea, then you see a movie and you see how it's big now, and you kind of miss all the bit in the middle
100%.
where they had to build
fail
so many times. Right, exactly. You miss all that nuance. You get to hear about the I'm CEO bitch business cards and all the pitching a VC in his pajamas as if that actually happened or so. You hear about that stuff, but you don't learn about the realities of the typo in the pitch deck that they actually went to pitch the VC with, or the algorithms that were actually massively inefficient that made everything a really slow experience that they had to ditch, and so on and so on and so on.
And the importance the importance of failure and building character, and how that essentially, you have to go through a journey of self. I think that doesn't get told much either. And what that means. What in some ways, you can also kind of say that the education system has failed these entrepreneurs, because to a degree, you're taught completely different things, right? It's all about getting A's and success. And then actually, our characters aren't developed to the degree in order to be able to cope with the failures, I think.
I agree. I think the entire economic system we're living within is designed to be self-sustaining and to support itself. We have an economy which lives on consumption, and which lives on production by other actors in that economy. And to feed that productivity, you need workers. At least today you do. And those workers, therefore, are the demand that the university is the supply side for. And the university, if you think about it, is merely a supplier to the economy, and is your degrees really align not necessarily with worthwhile pursuits from a personal actualization point of view or self-realization, but it's actually what's going to attract the most value and allow you to contribute value within the framework of working in a company. So if you're not going to work in a company, you're considered not valuable, or at least that was what it previously had been seen to be. I really think the education system has not been designed at all to help or train entrepreneurs. No, far from it. It's really being designed to be a conveyor belt into the companies that that keep an economy going.
Which makes me think about, look, we're in the age of disruption, right? So how valid is the MBA these days, except
very
for
controversial, but it's true.
Except for specific types of organizations which are being disrupted left, right, and centre by startups. That if you have a big corporation where you traditionally had a user base that were always going to buy, and it was like very, very secure, where actually you've got the Monzos of the world coming in and taking your user base. So how are these degrees, and even the masters in entrepreneurship and things like that, I'm really interested in like how equipped they are to actually or to prepare people for the new entrepreneurship journey.
I wonder about that as well. I think, to be honest, although the university's been the traditional path to give you some accreditation and say you're a credible you're a credible supplier of this skill set. Obviously, when everyone else has the same and there's only so much demand, then everyone's kind of still unemployed because, well, there's only so many people a company actually needs. In the entrepreneurship world, the wonderful thing is your university is the internet. Your university is literally your laptop, open a screen and get learning. So one thing I've tried to do is I set myself a curriculum that I'm progressing on.
Nice.
And there's a curriculum of learning, of topic areas I'm interested in and passionate about, that I discovered that I love. And I now go to learn, not because I want to get a degree, because it fulfills me, and I can leverage that actually on my entrepreneurial journey. And then there's sort of the more personal stuff. So there's maybe more personal curriculums that I'm on, but none of that comes with a degree or a certificate.
Yeah,
it's true, and it's so important. So important.
Exactly.
MOOCs,
Exactly.
Kind of those online courses. I mean, I remember the last one I did was Kaufman Fellows venture deals, and it's just, as founders understanding cap tables and all those kind of technical matters, and it's just so important, like you said. But you're in the driving seat. You need to figure out what you need.
Yes. Just Google it, especially in the early stages. Find the right people. In the early stages, maybe either Google it or find the right people and just get on with it. You have to be massively self-reliant.
Resilience. It's a test of resilience. So the personal development point that you just mentioned is like, nobody talks about that. Nobody, you could almost, in some ways, I feel as though before my life, before the startup world, in some ways my personal development kind of just halted. It kind of stalled. And then as soon as I went on this sort of entrepreneurial journey, that's when you have to really start to hold on, I'm getting down. I'm a little bit depressed. What's happening? Like all those pressures that you get from even just raising money, you have to really kind of work on yourself. Otherwise, you won't get through certain situations.
Yeah,
it
really forces you to. It's like essentially what is it? The saying, entrepreneurship is like chewing glass while staring into the abyss.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
No, I've not.
You really need to get to learn who you are and know yourself. What do you do after the 50th no? And there are 2 weeks of salary left. Like, what's your character? There's 2 weeks of money left. Are you going to lay off everybody? Are you going to have the tough conversations? What about their kids? What about their kids' school fees? What are they going to say to their husbands?
Very real.
Husbands and wives. These are the realities.
It's the reality.
It's not the front pages of the magazines. These are the realities of, do I let off Pedro with his newborn young son, or do I let off this really enthusiastic employee who I know has really worked so hard, and I'm just going to have to crush. Or do I go without and actually put it back in? What about those savings? There's a line that crosses over into the personal.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's not just
because that brings me on to my next question, just about kind of mental health and well-being, and how do you manage that as a founder? Do you have your founder persona, and then Emma, the founder, then Emma in her personal life, or how do you manage these things? Have you ever been depressed during the journey?
100%. Like we talked, when we had dinner the other week, I was talking about, when I went to the doctors. Like, so I think it was, I'm trying to think now what happened. I think we were raising our next round, and no, that's when I went on the retreat. Sorry, but there was a point when I was feeling really down. Like I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to, just to work. And every weekend I would, have to go and see my family, or I should have gone and seen my family, or met up with friends. I just didn't want to do it. I wanted me time. And I remember going to the doctor, and my doctor gave me the option between two things: antidepressants or CBT. And I was like, wow, I've gone into the doctors. I haven't actually spewed out everything that's going through my head, but she's already offering me pills. I was like, okay, no, I'll go down the CBT route. And for me, that was like just an eye-opener, because of all the different tools that, are literally at your fingertips. So just learning about how to live a balanced life, that was eye-opening for me. That was just a journey of self-discovery. I was like, okay, I should be going to see my family. I should force myself to go and see my friends, even for a little bit. Stop talking about BuddyBounce all the time, because these people don't care. And actually, it's from a health perspective, it's really, really good. It'd be good for me just to switch off for a bit, you know? And so it was literally just by doing that I discovered, whoa, actually this is having a negative effect on my personal well-being. And so it just forced me to look for the tools that I now employ on a daily basis. Do you know what I mean? Like whether it's meditation or yoga or going out in nature and switching off, and just trying to keep weekends as mine, or having just alone time, like my time to just read things that have got nothing to do with entrepreneurship, just general stuff, or listen to podcasts and things like that, and just learn and relax. Do you know what I mean? Like, but these are things that are very rarely talked about, you know. And so you would look at all of these people we've been talking about, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg or all of these other entrepreneurs and mentors that we've had, and think everything's perfect, right? Because nobody talks about it. It's just one of those taboo topics, I feel anyway.
Yeah, I think people feel that in the world of business, you've got to bring the business and leave the personal at home. But the reality is, I mean, as we don our outfits and go into the offices, we're just telling a story. And you're living a story, and you're in a role, and your employees come in and they're in a role, and you all work within this framework you've devised and tell this story, and then go home and tell a different story of all your personal lives. And that doesn't make sense. So I try to not go down that road, and I don't find that as healthy. I think whether it's in creating a personal relationship within a team, whether it's actually communicating authentically with their customers, whether it's actually having investors understand who you actually are and understand your credibility. I think authenticity actually matters a great deal. So stripping away that sales or sheen, because you know the reality is, you know, people are all born with 2 legs and 2 hands, and you know
some are, some aren't.
Some, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Some are not, right? Exactly. So I think it's important to be quite real. That's kind of how I try to approach it. But I mean, to kind of what you've been saying, there's definitely challenges along the journey. I mean, one I found was I came into this my last company, Viewsy. I came into it with such ferocity and just energy that I pushed myself extremely hard. I basically sprinted what should have been a marathon.
Wow.
So that would obviously result
Burnout.
that would result in things like burnout, which it's very easy to gloss over and kind of think, oh, you're just tired, and kind of really misunderstand until it hits you and you're like, this is not very much energy. So you kind of go from sprinting to walking when you should have been jogging all along, right? So my approach these days is to be a lot more measured and paced. I delegate almost everything. So I'm almost strategically lazy.
No, but I think that's also fantastic to be able to give trust to your team, because I imagine as a founder you've birthed this baby of an idea, you want to hold on to it, but to grow you do need to be able to delegate and empower others.
If your hands are doing all the work, then you know your team's not getting the opportunity to get things right or wrong, and to be able to work within, if they make mistakes, like make that an okay part of your culture. But in terms of managing yourself, that's one of your most important jobs as a founder, to manage your own well-being and mental state, because without you and your internal drive and clarity of mind, where does your entire company go? So it's super important to manage yourself. So these days I rest a lot more, take time for weekends, and make sure that, I mean, we're moving at pace and getting things done quickly and effectively, but understand that you want to be able to see the whole race through. So it's quite important.
Wow. Yeah, and that brings us nicely onto the topic of just, I guess, the life cycle, like I mentioned before, from idea to exit. So Emma, just want to talk more about your journey from the idea all the way to the exit, and what that process was like, because all founders dream of the exit. That's what everyone's racing towards. But what happens at the end and what after that?
Oh man, I mean, for us,
Ferrari.
What's that?
Ferrari.
Yeah,
Lamborghini.
right. Yeah, right. I mean, to be honest, I think with Julia and I, my co-founder, we'd been doing BuddyBounce for 5-6 years, and along the path we'd had 3 offers to be bought. I think the first one was just after we met, actually, at that Founders Forum event in LA, and but we persevered, and we were like, no. And at a certain point, we were raising another round of investment, and it fell through. And one of our non-exec directors left. And so we got a sort of like a bridging round with some of our investors. And I think it was during that period, Jill and I had a frank conversation about whether or not the business we were running was something that we wanted to continue with, you know, because I think when we got into it, so we our journey was like, so we had this other company called Taxi Jungle, which was a price comparison site for mini cabs, and we built this prototype out, but we didn't know how to deliver. We our backgrounds we had no background in business, so we went along to a startup weekend, and this was like a couple of years later. Like, we'd gone around the scene trying to understand the startup world and all that. Went to a startup weekend with a completely different idea, which was throwaway, but we were so protective about Taxi Jungle that we didn't talk about it. We went with something else just to learn, right? Because we were so naive. And that ended up winning Startup Most Likely to Make a Million.
No way.
So bit by bit, we kind of just parked Taxi Jungle and started building out BuddyBounce. And, you know, one of the, a couple of the judges actually, Farhan and Alicia Navarro, we kept in contact with them. They started opening doors to other people within the music world and that kind of thing. And so we just continued, we started developing this BuddyBounce idea, right, on the side. And it just so happened that we went to see Shah Wasmond, who I was talking about. She kind of set us this impossible task. We showed her the prototype. She stopped the meeting after 5 minutes and was like, you need to get this in front of will.i.am. We're like, whoa, what? Get this in front of will.i.am? How? Like, you just do it. You do that, I'll intro you to the European director of Wyra. And we were like, okay. And within a week, we did it. We managed to do it. Went back to her. She fulfilled what she said. Introduced us to Simon Devonshire at the time, and he was like, "Look, you've got 6 hours to apply for Wyra. I think what you girls are doing is really cool, you know." And we're looking for one more startup to join our first cohort. Awesome. So we got that in. Managed to get that place along with 2 other startups. They took 3 of us in the end, and that helped give us the confidence to leave our jobs because we got this 40K of investment. We ended up, and then we just pursued it. We continued grafting, grew out our fan base. I think we got our seed round when we had about 25,000 users using the platform, and then we just went on the slog. And so by the time we hit what I was saying earlier, year 5 or so, year 6, that's when we had this. Is the purpose and the mission of this business something we could see ourselves doing for another 5 to 10 years? And the reality was, it was a great idea, great business, but the purpose of connecting, you know, fans with their artists. And I must say, look, if maybe it would been, you know, Solange or people within my taste, maybe, but Justin Bieber, One Direction fans, it wasn't really something that gave me or fulfilled me. And Julia as well. And so
Justin Bieber's gonna watch this.
Do you know what? They sent us, his lawyers sent us cease and desist. That was one of the down periods.
Are you serious or joking?
No joke.
Do not mention my name in interviews ever again.
I will shut up. But
edit that bit.
That was,
right?
you know, there were loads of like,
I love Justin Bieber.
Loads of down periods like that when we had to take them off the site. But anyway, that's another story. And so we got to the point where we were like, okay, we're running out of money. Let's let's go talk to our biggest competitor. So we went on one of those trips. I think another one of these Founders Forum trips to LA, and the whole thing was like, don't bring up. We were like, let's explore it, but I can't say that we want to sell. And it just so happened that they were like, we'll be interested in potentially acquiring you guys. And we're like, So we managed to use that as leverage for another company that came in. And that was how we managed to exit, essentially.
Wow.
So, because it just so happened that at the same time that we actually had the third offer come in. And so when I went to LA, and I was like, okay, I'm going to see if we can get our biggest competitor to also come in, and then that would help us leverage or get a better deal, essentially, from the people that eventually bought us, which is Crowdmix. But then in the end, Crowdmix died a death a few months after we sold. So and a whole other story. So experiencing the other side of it as well. It's like literally we went through the full life cycle of startup experience.
So Crowdmix acquired you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crowdmix acquired us. They raised about $20 million. And they had 180 staff. You know, we got kind of absorbed into this huge, when we talk about stories and we talk about selling the dream, that was the Crowdmix story. Kind of like Fire. You know this? I don't know if you kind of like the Fire Festival. That was Crowdmix, but the social network version. Yeah. And then they eventually imploded. But by that point, me and my new co-founder, Odera, we'd already had this idea, and we were planning to kind of leave anyway to pursue Mindful Team. And so it just kind of, in some ways, worked out. It worked out in some ways, but on the other side, we had an earn out. So we got kind of half the money, and then we had a kind of earn out. And so we lost some of that. So it was a difficult experience, but a really character building one. And in fact, with Mindful Team, that's what kind of encouraged me to not raise this time round. Not at this point, to actually really try to build a business first and raise to scale. That's the view I've kind of got now.
I mean, that's definitely some tumultuous experiences. I can echo some of that with what we had. So we went through an accelerator. And in that accelerator, we initially went into that with some personal savings. We managed to survive on literally the barest of bare bones of pay spread out across more people than you think. It felt like I was feeding the 5,000 with a loaf of bread. Anyway, and then we basically went in this accelerator. I would be pitching and then building the product and then trying to convince customers to try the product at the same time. So it was kind of all of this simultaneously juggling these three different balls. So from sort of investor check to investor check, it was a very arduous process. It was nuts. There were times when it was, 2 months away from run out of money. Amazing. This is the longest run we've had. Bring out the champagne. So it was really constantly raising. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, which you shouldn't do what I did, by the way. That's not a recommendation. But no, I spent a lot of time raising, and I think we ended up with about 14, 15 investors on our cap table by the end. And that's really more than we should have had at that stage of company. But like through it all, lots of interesting experiences. We'd had, I think over that period, we had a few offers for acquisition. By then, through the life of the company, it was quite interesting because the first lot of offers for acquisition came right at the start. So in the first, six, it was interesting how that happens. First year, I think we'd fielded something like 3 offers for potential acquisition, but at that time we were thinking, well, if they're looking to acquire us today, then they'll be interested tomorrow. Let's just press on with the mission. And then a great value of silence in between when the realities of executing kick in, and you're now focused not on the pitching and the excitement around what you're doing, but actually on building the company itself. And then for us, fortunately, at the end, it was, we did get a few offers. I think it was one Christmas I'd gone away to see the family and spent 2 weeks in. This is my one time of the year when I switch off, and I get proper sleep, and I had this sort of this time of clarity. I just thought to myself, well, how I personally felt about where the sector was going. We were selling to a market which I thought really wasn't in its best health. We were selling to retailers. I personally go shopping once a year. So how we ended up selling to retailers was kind of by an accident, because our technology solved the problem for them, but it wasn't what it tried to be to begin with. So we ended up selling to retailers, and anyway, so a reflection has seemed to me that, well, this isn't really the mission that we set out to do. And, you know, how many more years do we want to put into fulfilling this mission? And actually, on balance, this may be the best time to respond to some of those conversations we'd had in the past. So we actually responded to one prior outreach from a competitor, and that then, on the back of their positive interest, we actually then leveraged that to set up about a dozen other conversations, which resulted in about, I think, between 5 and 7 offers of various types.
Wow.
And then we sealed the deal with one of those. So yeah, but it was amazing because it was such a long period of time for everything, and then literally it happened all so quickly. So literally from deciding to getting those offers took about 14 days.
Wow.
All in. It was really, really fast. And then to close everything was another 4 weeks. So 6 weeks in on Valentine's Day, I literally signed. I know. It's like, yeah, love yourself. Exactly, made a match. I like that. I'm gonna use that. But yeah, that was actually how it happened for me. Yeah.
And huge as well, because I remember reading about it in the press. Ipsos Maury. So.
Yes, yeah, Ipsos. Yeah, they're a competitor in the research space. We both focus on helping retailers better understand the physical spaces. So yeah, it made sense as a match.
Okay, great. So no, thank you for sharing all of that. So we've spoken a lot about challenges, but let's kind of lighten things up. What about some of your unique events? Because I think you both went to the Founders Forum in LA and had some very unique experiences.
Yeah, I mean the job's got peaks and troughs, so there are definitely peaks.
That was definitely a peak. Definitely.
Yeah,
tell us more. Tell us everything.
Well,
all the juicy bits.
Well, I mean, it wasn't. I don't think Founders Forum do great events, like 100%. Probably the best events I've actually been to.
Yeah.
You know, but there are lots of like different types of peaks that come, you know, with the territory. I think a friend, I think it was actually Alicia, who said that entrepreneurs are the new nobility. So yeah, it's kind of quite a valid point. So there's a lot of attention and access thrown in your direction when you're on this journey. So whether it's from, you know, being invited to spend time and advising or informing heads of state or very senior levels of government, to, you know, sort of whether it's giving talks or even events like this, you do get a lot of exposure and get to give back and actually get a lot of aggrandizement for you know for what you're doing. Yeah. So the Founders Forum and other events like that, definitely a part of that. Yeah, 100%.
And Emma, any particular things that stand out as really exciting experiences you've had?
Yeah, I think the event we went on was definitely one of the. It was so fun.
You've got to tell us more. Come on,
tell us more. Fun.
More.
Oh God, where do I start with that? I don't know. Like, I guess for us it was really cool, especially because we hadn't launched yet. So we managed to. I think we were in Noir and we were put forward as, I think it was it creative innovators or something like that. I can't remember, but there were like lots of really cool, really successful startups on this trip. You know, people like Michael Acton Smith from Moshi Monsters, or what's the guy from anyway, there were just like lots and lots of different startups there that were doing big things. So for us to be invited to go on this trip, we were like, wow, this is amazing. But once we got there, it was like, oh my God, just the ability, like the opportunity that was literally within reach, having to do these presentations that we did to like literally all the senior execs of pretty much every entertainment company in and around that area, the Bay Area. So people from like pitching pitching the CEO of Universal Music in his garden.
Yeah.
In his garden?
Like,
Oh my God.
It was mental,
insane.
right?
Yeah.
It was just insane.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember looking up, and there was an event in his place, I guess, and looking up, and there's it was a dynamo doing some magic tricks for the crowd.
Yeah.
Just in the middle of it all, and Estelle's serenading you.
Estelle.
Yeah,
Oh my God. Estelle serenading you.
from a stool.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't know who she was, but I thought this is really not Estelle,
I did because of BuddyBounce, of course, right?
But a different
like,
artist. And there was a different artist, and she was playing, and I thought, oh, she's really good. Oh, she should get signed. turns out it's the like the super successful and very well known Zia V. Not very well known to me as an artist. So yeah, like amazing experiences like that.
Yeah. It was just mental.
Yeah.
I can't even. I remember like meeting one of Damon Wayans, one of the Wayans brothers in the garden, and he's like showing me his startup, like, and he's asking for advice.
Oh
and
my
I'm
goodness!
Like, oh my God! And then we met up for lunch as well, and it was like, it was just so you would never I would never have imagined like growing up in a bloody council estate in Hackney that I would be exposed to this, and that some of those conversations actually moved our business forward. Like
really?
We would never, like in fact, the first offer we got was from somebody who attended a company that attended that kind of conference. So, just being able to have that just build your confidence, and it just says, what, you're on the right path. Continue executing, and it just gives you that energy that you need when, especially given that the journey is, peaks and troughs. It's like up and down. These are the highs that just...
The highs are definitely awesome.
You ride them.
Yeah. I say the highs are, you get very, like from the lows, the lows never get less low. They don't get
bottom.
right. They don't get easier, but you do get more resilient. You do get stronger. So you become able to take any of the far more of the hits and get less bruised by them, and actually you're ready to just push on and plow through and
I remember Bill Clinton. Going to Will.i.am's benefit conference or whatever, and just being literally a few feet away from Bill Clinton, hearing him deliver a speech, and it's like wow.
Absolutely.
It was just amazing. Yeah. And then David Cameron.
Oh yeah, David Cameron dialed in, that's true.
He dialed in.
No, he did.
As he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he did. It was, I don't know.
You've had some really fascinating experiences. So just the nonchalant way you're talking about it.
No, this is not trying to be blasé.
No, but that's what's so beautiful about it. That it's just, you've worked so hard, you've gone to this stage, but you're just doing you.
For me, I'm not, I don't want to come across as trying to be blasé about it. But yeah, they're amazing experiences. Like you just don't get that type of exposure in most other careers, right? Yeah. So it's I think one of the things I could say about the journey is because you have probably the most effective vehicle for impact and leverage and change in the world today by building a startup, a collection of people and resources focused on a particular mission. That does open up a lot of doors. So yeah, 100%. I think what'll be interesting will be as more countries start to realize the impact of entrepreneurship on job creation and as it impacts their economies. As more of that happens, I think this will spread to more across the world. I don't think every country realizes it just yet. So I know in the UK, for example, Downing Street have been very open and welcomed their doors, and the royal family in Buckingham Palace, and Prince Andrew is very much involved in entrepreneurship. But I think that's because there's perhaps recognition of the strategic importance of the technology entrepreneurship, specifically in the UK, in driving growth, jobs, taxes. I don't know everyone's there yet, so I don't know if maybe the same benefits come in every ecosystem. If I were in maybe Greece or southern Spain, I don't know if it's exactly the same. But here we're definitely in a great place.
We're in a great place. This ecosystem is thriving. It's just the amount of growth in such a short space of time. Do you know what I mean? Like Silicon Roundabout is like just bustling with creativity and innovation, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And like when I go to other countries, and you know, there are some countries, you know, in Europe, look at France and Germany, Berlin, really starting to create thriving ecosystems. But London is like,
London's leading the way. And I know in the Middle East there's a lot happening there as well. I spent a little bit of time recently in Oman, where Phase Ventures Phase Ventures is the first private VC firm over there. And they've just run the country's first accelerator, who've just had their demo day. Wow. And so they're now doing really great things in actually stirring that economy and spurring up innovation within the region. Dubai have obviously made their name already for stepping in very enthusiastically into this space as well. So it is spreading. I think there's a recognition at the national levels now of the need to drive job creation through innovators.
Yeah,
so it's unstoppable, I think.
Actually reminds me of the time I spent in Nigeria when I was doing my stint in entrepreneurship there, and just the buzz. And it was a few months just before Mark Zuckerberg came in, and everybody went crazy. But it was just,
you were there first.
Yeah, I was. But it was just such an amazing environment. The hustle, the bustle, the energy was just ridiculous. And then President Buhari did his own kind of demo day, etc. So it is really, really important. Gosh, so our time is nearly up, but as we come full circle, just want to come back to the topic of diversity again, and just kind of what challenges and opportunities you see. Because I think, you know, as many of us were immigrants and coming here, the first thing your parents told you as a child is make sure you work 10 times as hard as everybody else, blah, blah, blah. But on the founder journey, have things changed, you know, in the world of startup? Is it more equal, or
I think
what are some of the challenges?
You know, we talked about this before, but like, you know, we have an amazing ecosystem. However, not everybody is being able to make the most of that. You know, 89% of all VC funding in the UK currently still goes to all male-founded teams. So there's a massive opportunity. There's a challenge, but there's a massive opportunity to make that growth more inclusive, to be able to spread that let's say wealth to more of the people in some of the most deprived places in London that are literally on the doorstep of in the heart of Tech City. And so I think, you know, with OneTech, which is the part of the work I do at the moment, that's what we're trying to do. We're really trying to drive that change, because ultimately, you know, the companies that are more diverse have more diverse people, journeys, thoughts. They are the most profitable companies in the world, and it fosters creativity, it fosters more innovation, having people, and ultimately tech is for everyone. You know, all of these products that are being developed, that are mainly developed by male-founded teams, white teams, they are for everybody pretty much, you know? So we need more people part of those conversations in order to continue to grow our economy and to continue to be able to lead the way in the world.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, I mean, coming into it, I don't walk into a room and sort of think I'm a black man, I'm at a disadvantage, but I do note that I'm often the only black man in the room. And, you know, you just sort of, that's just the default for me, right? And if I made that an issue, it'd be my issue. So the way I see it is, look, you're in probably the most difficult career choice in the world. That's possible to choose. There's no manual. If you're innovating, you're by definition going out into the unknown anyway. So this is already difficult. So you just deal with it. You just create something that people love and then find a way to get it to them. And the truth is, customers don't care what the color, you know, or gender of the CEO is. Customers care about their problems, and if you solve those problems, the customers will use your product more than the competitors, right? You know, J.K. Rowling created a product that people loved. She's not a technology entrepreneur, but what she created resonated with her audience, and you know, she did an amazing job, and they absolutely love it, you know, from her as a woman, let's say. Or in the technology world, the tools that you need to be able to create are accessible to all. The code you need to write, and the customers are very accessible. You can, there are absolutely advantages through, let's say, having access to investors who it's been proven are more likely to invest in people who look like them. But I think that's changing. There are initiatives and VCs, Backstage VC, for example, who are focusing on creating a pool of resources and a level of a community attention to be placed on empowering those who were previously underestimated. So I'd say, yeah, sure, it's probably a disadvantage, but like if you can't go with that mindset. You've got to go with the mindset of, irrespective of the barriers in my way, I'm going to break through, I'm going to knock them down, I'm going to succeed. And I'm going to succeed because what it matters is the relationship between what I'm creating and what the people I'm aiming it for actually want. And that is where it starts and ends.
Yeah. I think, I echo that. So there is that, again, going back to the personal development side, right? If you listen to all of that, if you go in with that attitude, you won't get anywhere. So you need to make sure that I think it's so interesting. Like, the entrepreneurship journey teaches you a lot about yourself and the resilience that you need resilience. So you can't, if the first hurdle is, you know what, people don't look like me, so I'm not going to, then you're going to fail. You're not going to do it. So you need to kind of get through that barrier, rise above it, create change. Exactly. But create change in the process by just doing it. Do you know what I mean? Because other people younger than us will look at us and be like, okay.
We are role models for future generations.
For the future generations.
I mean, one thing I'm passionate about now is actually mentoring and helping startups who are doing great things. And wherever they've come from, but I particularly try and help those who come from diverse backgrounds.
I need to sign you up then. To our mentoring.
Is it?
Yeah.
We should talk.
Yeah, we need to talk. We need to talk. Exactly.
Okay, sure. But I really love helping younger startups, but especially those who come from backgrounds similar to mine. I mean, when my first funding was a £17,000 personal loan from an NatWest on Bishopsgate. There was no VC angel like anything. I was massively uninformed. Didn't have any access or resources or network. Didn't really know where to start. So I did everything wrong. And to help with those who come after me not make those same mistakes and have a sharper incline in their trajectory to success is something I care about. So if anyone does want to reach out, feel free. Details at the bottom.
Yeah.
I don't even know if this is to get on YouTube or not, but details will be somewhere. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the world is changing, but but what you look like, and what gender you are, and what physical body you have, I think matters far less today than it ever has. So yeah, I would almost say it's almost a non-issue if you choose to make it a non-issue. If you choose to decide that what matters is your relationship between yourself and your customers, not yours and the holders of purse strings, guess what? Those holders of purse strings have a job, and their job is to grow that pool of money that they're managing. I'm talking about venture capitalists, of course. So if you have a company that is growing at a fast rate, guess what they're buying? They're buying your growth. So if you're able to give them growth, they are coming to you. They're actually chasing you with money and saying, please, will you take some of my money? In fact, can I please give you a bit more so that you'll grow it so I can make a return for my investors? So actually, you've got to understand the power you have by being good at what you do. If you're good at what your core product or business is, you will find growth, and then resources will find you, and that's really the start and end of it all.
I guess that there is a balance there as well, because I think as with OneTech and Backstage Capital and other champions out there there is the balance of actually helping inform people of their their unconscious bias and some of the things that they may be doing that are not quite down the line. So I think there's a balance, right?
Sure.
It's good to have people that are activists who are going out there and are helping to create change, but I think it isn't one way or the other. I think it's almost like along that line, down the middle.
I think it's important to change things and at the same time work with them as they are
Yeah.
and succeed
Yep.
in spite. So
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really important thing.
I think it's,
what you
yeah.
do, you guys are doing is very important.
Yeah, I think it's about people going out there and actually having those conversations and leveraging and looking at the data, getting the data and being able to go to the right places and actually helping them to change. But also the change has to come on the individual as well. So it's the group and the individual. The individual has to work on themselves and the barriers, because a lot of it is confidence as well. Confidence, no access to resources, no access to networks, no access. So work needs to be, I think, done on both sides. But in the same way that you just plugged yourself, if anybody here who's listening to this wants to get involved with OneTech, we are essentially trying to change the face of startups by actually getting or providing more opportunity for people who maybe don't have the resources to kind of navigate their way through the ecosystem. So please go on weareonetech.org, sign up, and hopefully we'll be able to help you on your journey as well.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your journeys. I think this is just the beginning and there'll be more interesting podcasts to come, but really excited about what you've both done and what you're going to be doing in the future as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been great.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.